Well, hey, Bible Love listeners. So glad you're with us today. You're in for a treat. But this is our summer series. And as always, we are praying for the mission of the church. So the Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Ever living God, whose will it is that all should come to you through your Son, Jesus Christ. Inspire our witness to him, that all may know the power of his forgiveness and the hope of his resurrection, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Amen.
So, we have the honor today of having the Reverend Deacon C.J. Van Slyke on our podcast. As you know, we're talking about different vocations in the church, and CJ is a deacon, and she's also been a very big supporter of the Bible Love podcast, and I'm grateful for that. And she is my friend, and I'm so glad she could be here today. She's retired, but as we just said, deacons really never retire. So, CJ, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. It's great
Yeah.
to be with you.
So, CJ, talk to me a little bit about your call to be a clergy person as a deacon.
I think, like a lot of deacons, we were called before we realized it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I was thinking about this the other night, and something really stood out vividly in my mind about an incident. It was what you might call an epiphany.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a sweet, I worked at UAB, which where you and I first, I think, met
Yes.
many years ago. And I was working in a dialysis clinic, and one of the sweet wives, African American, was sitting waiting for her husband. And she stopped me in this hallway and she said, "You know, what you do is not a job. What you do is a ministry."
Mm.
And I thought, whoa, wow. And that really kind of began to open my eyes to about what I do and what I had been doing and what I really love to do. And and I guess the other part of my call is I can blame it on my parents. When I was a
Hmm.
little girl, we came from a small seacoast town in New England, and they belonged to a lot of organizations, and we're always doing some things for the community, helping them out. So as a young child, I had this sort of model of
Right.
serving others. And then, and then it's just, I was really called to do a lot of volunteering. I hadn't put quite God in there yet, but it was
Mhm.
coming as part of that. It
Mhm.
wasn't my decision, really. And so I worked a lot with the American Red Cross after I became a licensed counselor, along with being a nurse. And they were needing mental health specialists for in the early 90s when they were having floods and fires everywhere. And so I just said, okay. And I wrote them and they said, yeah. And they flew me up to Washington, D.C. It was
Wow.
crazy. There was like 13 of us that were in that first ever group.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. And so then I spent the next 3 weeks in Albany, Georgia,
Wow.
working with the folks that had been affected by the floods. And then I started, as my spiritual formation became um,
Mm-hmm.
more intense, more inviting, more personal and outwardly. I found myself working at a women's overnight shelter volunteering. And it just sort of began to just snowball. It wasn't, I just, I can't explain it. It would, and I think most people would probably explain. It's hard to explain,
It is. It
but
is.
there's this inner pull.
Yeah, it's so interesting because If you had stayed a nurse your entire career, that would be a ministry. If you had stayed a counselor your entire career, that would be a ministry.
Mhm.
So lay ministry is, I was just interviewing Brianna Carter from the diocese.
Mhm.
I mean, it's so, so, so important. In fact, it's ahead of the priesthood and the diaconate and all those things. But there's something about the diaconate, which is the call to serve other people, right? I mean,
Right.
that's essentially what a deacon is. That God was kind of pulling all those things together for you, right? As I listened to your story, the nursing, the counseling, the volunteering, and putting it all in a neat box. And it sounds like that's what led you to this particular ordained ministry.
And then we have that period of where I kept saying no.
Right, right. So talk about that too.
So uh, I got called to do mission work in Haiti
That's right.
and did that for many years. And during that process, this is when people would say, "Oh, you need to do EFM. Um, have you thought about being a deacon?" And my first response was, "I don't want people telling me what to do.
Right, right,
Isn't that
right.
crazy? Miss Independent here. Like, yeah, I know what I'm doing." And so I said no for a good while. And then I had some of my friends who went into the first two deacons class. Henry Parsley rejuvenated
Mhm.
the diaconate here in Alabama in early 2000 and watched them as they went through this process and still wasn't really quite sure. Um, and so I got invited by an interim priest who was at St. Francis of Assisi in Indian Springs, Peter Horn, who said, "Oh, come on, let's just go to a listening session. Nothing's going to change. You're going to still be the same."
Mhm.
And I went, and I was just in. I was just
Yeah.
in, you know.
I think it's so interesting because this is we are friends in a lot of ways, but Haiti is also a big part of my call story as well
Mhm.
as it was yours. And whenever you do mission work, you think you're going to go down there and just do all these things to help people. And you do those things, but what really happens is you learn so much from them and you from the people of Haiti or the
Right.
Dominican Republic, wherever you're going, you get so much more out of it. And for me, and I think this is part of yours too, that was such a big part of God telling me you need to be an ordained ministry, and to serve in the way that I'm calling you to serve. Haiti really put that stamp on it for me.
Right. I think part of in doing that work as well is, I think for the call of the deacon, it has to be a spirit of willing to work out in the margins and being in uncomfortable places, feeling that invitation and
Absolutely.
and still finding joy,
Yeah.
not to fix things, but to just be present.
Yeah. So talk about, well, first of all, tell us about what you had to do for your education and all of that to be ordained. Talk
Right.
about that a little bit.
When I was going through the diaconate process, you had to have completed or being ready to complete education for ministry, which was,
Mhm.
as you know, a 4-year program for a deeper study of theology and so forth in the church. And then we went through about a year and a half of discernment. You have a kind of a committee and you have discernment process, and you have to write some essays and answer questionnaires. You have to have a psychological test if they,
This is not an easy project
yeah.
process for someone who's not going to get paid to do it.
I didn't mention that, but we get paid. It's just, it's like Bitcoin. You don't see it, somewhere it's out there.
No, but I've always been like astonished by that because to be called and to do this work and to not be And I know you don't do it for the finances. I don't do it for the finances, but I mean, I have to make a living somehow, you
Well,
know.
yes,
And
you're on that other side.
yeah, so I just think that's a beautiful thing. I
Yeah,
really do.
yeah. And so then you have to go through the Commission on Ministry, and they decide after all of that whether you should proceed on as what they call a postulant. And and so you go through that, and then you can go through all that, and they can say, no, I think you're better to stay as a lay person than going through a more ordained kind of ministry preparation. And so then once you got through that and it was okay, you did a 2 year diaconate program where we met every month for 2 years. And we did that here in the diocese at Carpenter House, which is a little different format than what we have now.
Right.
And then after that, you go through oral exams and written exams, and which were a little nerve wracking to say the least. And then you get ordained and you get assigned a church. It's sort of like being in the military. You have a 3 year sign up,
Yeah.
and I got assigned to go to Clanton, which is about 40 miles south of where I live.
Hmm. So, how many churches have you served?
Trinity
Uh-huh.
and St. Stephen's.
Yes, and you served at St. Stephen's a long time. Right? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
So in your role as an ordained deacon serving in these churches, of course you're part of the liturgy. You know, you read the gospel, you help set the table, you know, all of the preach, all of those things. But talk about what it looks like on a day-to-day basis for you as an ordained deacon.
Now, before retirement, and I've just been kind of
Yes.
revisiting this
Hmm.
because of the way the diaconate has waxed and waned and changed over the hundreds and hundreds of years. Um, we got away. Originally, we were not necessarily serving on commissions and boards and all of that kind of stuff. And then it became more so. And then for some, it's become more of committees and that kind of thing. And I
Hmm.
was really feeling that struggle. So day to day, it would be not, struggle in not a bad way, but just feeling being called and not always feeling like you had the time.
Yeah.
So within the church itself, it was planning committees, planning and doing teaching classes and helping with like acolyte training and Eucharistic training, and also being on pastoral care and outreach committees, um, being liaisons to other NGOs in the community, like community kitchens and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So, and bringing in new ministries
Right.
to the church.
Well, I think that's one of the wonderful things about the church is that it offers ministries for people to be involved in that they may not have a chance
Right.
or understanding. St. Stephen's has this wonderful like nook of all the outreach opportunities
Mm-hmm.
that are there. And you know, people don't know how to connect. The church helps us do that. And deacons are a huge part of that. You know, being sort of the eyes and ears and the feet on the ground of what are the things God is calling us to do and be a part of. And I imagine that that's a little bit difficult too, because there are things we think we should be a part of, but what is it that God is really calling us to
Right.
be a part of?
Right.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think too, the other role, um, which has really, I think, strengthened, is to encourage um, the parishioners, the lay,
Hmm.
to invest and lead these ministries, to bring
Yeah,
them up to lead. Uh, and so we have to serve as a model for that and find
absolutely.
people who are also willing. Um, so we get outside our walls and really begin to know who our neighbors are
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's a real, that's really doing God's work.
Absolutely. And you mentioned you had to be in some uncomfortable places. What does that look like? Speaking for the marginalized, you
Oh,
know, that.
yeah. And I've been doing a lot of immigration work over the last 4 or 5 years.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's being a voice for those who do not have a voice, whether they're unhoused, um, whether they've been here 30 years from another country, worked, paid taxes, lived great lives, and contributed to the community, and suddenly find themselves oppressed.
Mm.
Um, Finding people who are being let out of detention centers to be going to sponsors. And so I just, and it's always, in Alabama, we have a high food deserts,
Yeah.
medical service deserts, which we are addressing. I mean, we still have maternity care issues. There's just so much,
The
even
work never
here.
ends, does
Yeah,
it?
yeah. One of the questions I used to get is why do you why do you go to Haiti when we have so many issues
Oh,
right
yeah,
here
I
at
get that
home?
question a lot
You
too.
know, and Bill Yon always gave me this wonderful advice because I just felt like, how do I explain this? And he always said, there are those who need to be here and in one place, and there are those who need to be in other places. This is where they're called, and this is what they do. Doesn't
Mhm.
disregard anything else that's going on in the world.
Mhm.
And so, and it's just that your place right now is here,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
I agree. I mean, and I've felt that I've been asked that question too, but also like when I've left a church and went to another church, I mean, I
Mhm,
just recently did that and like this
mhm.
is where I'm supposed to be right now. Even though it's hard to leave the
Right,
past, I'm sure you felt that when you retired from St. Stephen's, not that you're not still doing a lot of ministry, but that day to day that you were doing, but you
right.
feeling called to do it in a different way. So speaking of, now that you're in retirement, you're not really, but tell me what day-to-day life looks like now as far as serving.
Um, Actually, I'm still on the pastoral care committee and the outreach committee at the parish.
Of course you are.
Um, I've been on the committee for grants um, and ministry from the diocese, if you want to
Mhm.
formally kind of look at things.
Yeah.
But I've also been doing a ministry out in the Woodlawn neighborhood, which is a marginalized, has a high, low income, unhoused group. And we do Laundry Love, which is
Yeah.
providing free laundry services. And during that, you can provide social service support and prayers. And we have a free library and activity area for the kids at the Laundry Love. Um, we have a group called the Soil Sisters because our ministry is also to God's creation.
Mm.
So, and
So
go ahead.
just so important is
Oh,
all
it is. And so we have like 6 acres around our campus. So over the last 6 years, we've been taking out invasives and putting back native plants and
Mm.
trying to create what God had wanted to create in the beginning. Anyway,
Yep.
um, what else? I just kind of try
Well,
to,
that's a lot, CJ.
oh, but let's see, what else where are we doing? Um,
You're doing a lot.
I just, and I try to be at the altar at least once a month.
Oh, that's
Um,
good.
because that's that thin place, that sacred
Yeah,
place. And
definitely.
so that's just a few of the things that I'm still kind of busy in.
That's awesome. I think the diaconate is one of the most special ministries that we have. Even though I was only a deacon for 6 months, I felt so called in that moment of those
Mhm.
6 months, to really be a deacon and not try
Mhm.
to be a priest yet, I wanted to live into what I was being called to in that moment and in that time, and I've worked with some amazing deacons, and
Mhm.
just real grateful for y'all's work and the way God has called you into the ministry that God has called you into. We're better. We're a better church. We're better people because of deacons. So thank you, CJ, for what you
Well,
do.
thank you so much. It's it's good. It's allowing people who have thought about the call to think about it in ways that what really speaks to them, and I think it's really part of your faith journey
Oh,
because
for sure.
once you step out and you think, what am I doing here on a mountain in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah.
And it's sort of like when Jesus sent out the 70,
Yeah.
and they were afraid, and he just gave them the minimal and said, go and come back and tell me. And how joyful they were, how hard it was, but how joyful
Oh, I
it was.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really is a joy to do what we do, even in the really heartaches and the marginalized people that we see and all of that. It is I still feel so blessed to get up and do it every day, and I know you do too. And I always think, well, when that goes away, I guess it's just time for me to not do it anymore. And so I hope it never goes away, that feeling in my heart. Even my dad, who's retired and you're retired, you're still doing ministry. Like it doesn't stop. And that's a gift, because
I
I think
so
it,
remember your dad
yeah,
when we
he's,
were at Katrina, and we were working in a MASH tent down in
yeah,
with Katrina down in Mississippi, and
yeah.
how joyful he was and how wonderful he was to the folks that had nothing.
Thank you. He's an amazing man.
Yes, he.
I'm very proud to be his daughter. And I'm really proud to be your friend. Thank you, CJ.
Oh, you're very kind.
Okay, listeners, remember as always that we love you, but most importantly, God does.